Well, the dynamic pricing now has been widely applied among many of the European energy market, and the training session for today will be focused on their concept and about our strategies of the dynamic pricing, and also how to operate them in our app, and some of the questions and answers we might encounter. Well, let's move to the first part, the introduction of the dynamic pricing. Well, actually, the dynamic pricing are the pricing plans for the energy resources that changed with the real-time market conditions. And unlike the fixed rate utility contracts that will allow you to pay the same rate per kilowatt hour despite of the demand, well, these dynamic tariffs, they can fluctuate throughout the day. And here is a working principle of the dynamic pricing that when the demand is low, the price will decrease. And when the demand is high, so in these hours, the price will goes up. So why it matters to the users? That is because if we can be flexible and can move some, for example, some of the major energy consumption tasks like charging our EV or to using the heat pump into some cheaper hours, and in that way, our energy bill will absolutely goes down. And this is where our Solinteg solution could add in the real value, because we can not only help the users to shift their usage hours, we can also help the users to install the energy from the cheaper hours and save it for later to use. And that is why we have developed our Solinteg Intelligent Mode. So considering the characteristics of the energy market and also considering that the different users, they might have different expectations of the way they want to join in the dynamic pricing. And we have developed this intelligent mode. Well, this is a comprehensive mode and combines with several working modes together, including the general mode, the battery charge, the battery discharge, the feeding, the peak shifting, and the PV charging mode. Well, you can just imagine. So if the user, they want to use the dynamic price, but they don't have the intelligent mode, the total process will be a little complicated. Well, first, he will need to have the real-time price data from another platform, and then he needs to set those manual settings every day according to the real-time data. But with the intelligent mode, we'll only need to choose a strategy that fits his requirement, and the system will automatically and intelligently do all the rest for them and brings the user the values. So before we using the intelligent mode, we'll see if our country or our devices can meet the requirement. Well, the users, the country they're in must be included in the country list of here. So we have now included the dynamic pricing from England, Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and other European countries. And after checking the country list, there's another thing for us to check. That is to see if our devices can meet the requirement. Well, first, we need to see if our device is among the list. And also, we need to make sure that the firmware version of these devices have met the requirement over here. And after these two things checked, we can join in the dynamic pricing. So as we know that the principle of the dynamic pricing is that we need to get the accurate and the real-time price data. So that is why we have integrated these dynamic pricing platforms in our website. For example, the ENSO-E, the L preset, the Octopus Energy, and the Node Pool. So we have their API, and that is why we can get this dynamic pricing in our app. And the users, they can directly see the price data through their app. And for example, if your country haven't been among the list of the intelligent mode, and that is okay if you can provide your the dynamic pricing platforms which are using in your country, and better with the access of the API and contact with us, the Solinteg Academy. And once we have confirmed every information is correct, the total process will be like in 2 months. And after that, you can enjoy the dynamic pricing in your country. So next, let's see the strategies we have under the intelligent mode. Well, these strategies are all based on the day-ahead price ranking, but the key point is the users, they can actively to set the rules based on their own habits. Well, let's take a look at the first one first. So the first strategy is the duration. Well, this strategy means that the users, they can decide how long they want to charge the battery or discharge the battery by setting the time period. So the principle of this will be like once the user has set the time period of under the duration strategy, so now the system will just automatically ranking all the price along the day and then find the high price period and the low price period. And then the system will use the high price period to discharge the battery and use the low price period to charge the battery. And we can see the example over here for a better understanding. And before we explain how the strategy works, let's get familiar with every element in this picture. Well, this picture is taken from the real application of dynamic pricing. So here we can see, by clicking here, we can see all the price data of the day. And by clicking here, we can see the price data of tomorrow. And the value over here, this one shows the highest price data of the day, and here shows the lowest data of the price data of the day. So also, considering that all the price data we get from those dynamic pricing platforms are actually the wholesale price. So the standard price here means the price we get from those dynamic pricing platforms. But considering every user, they need to put some extra charge when they're actually using the electricity in their house. For example, they need to be include the handling fee and the distribution fee and also some tax. So the users, they can put this extra charge information in their app. And after that, this will show the real export price in their system. And this shows the actual import price in their system. And over here, you can see there is a chart. Well, this part will show the price, and this part shows the time. And here we can see that there have different colors of this square. So each color represents a different working mode. Well, for example, this green-blue one means the battery discharge mode, and this red one means the battery charge mode, and the blue one here means the general mode. Okay, so let's get to explain how the strategy is working under the duration control. Well, first, this strategy is especially useful for those users who know how long will their battery to fully charged or discharged, so that according to the time of their battery charge or discharge, they can set the time period. For example, the user here, he wants to charge the battery for like 2 hours during the day, and he wants to discharge the battery for like 3 hours during the day. So now the system will looking for the time period that fits the requirement. And from here, we can see that the system have find these 3 hours have the highest price throughout the day. And then the system will using this period of time to running the battery discharge mode. And the system finds that during these 2 hours over here, it has the lowest price throughout the day. And for this period of time, the system will running at the battery charge mode. And for the rest of the time, the system will running at the general mode. So that is all for the duration control strategy. The second strategy is about the percentage. Well, this strategy means that the users, they can decide which part of the price today is a high price and which part of the price today is a low price by setting the percentage of the price difference. And let's explain how this strategy works. Well, first, the user set the percentage, and after that, this step is very important because the system will first looking for the highest price of the day, and then the system will looking for the lowest price of the day. And after that, the system will do the calculation to find out the price difference in this day, and this price difference is a price range. So after that, it will using the percentage that is set by the user to find out which part is a high price and which part is a low price. And after that, the system will automatically using the high price period to running the battery discharge mode and using the low price period to running the battery charge mode. And we can see the example over here. And to help you get a better understanding, we can show how the calculation has been done in real case. So we're using the calculator. So, as we have said, well, the system will first, or for example, the user have said, I want the top 20% of the price today as a high price, and I want the bottom 20% price of the day as a low price. So after the setting has been done, the system will looking for the time period that fits the requirement. The first step is that the system will looking for the highest and the lowest price of the day, and that can be shown up here. So let's do a simple calculation. As it's a negative value over here, so I would just use a plus. So, sorry. So after that, we'll get this result. And this result is the price range of the day. And we're using this result to times with the percentage we have set here. And so we can use this result over here to find out the standard of what is a high price. And for example, we take the high price standard as example. We're using the highest price to minus this result, which is, and the result is over here. So for the system, it will trying to looking for all the prices which is higher than this value, and we can see from this slides. So the red line over here, it shows us a standard to define what is the high price. And we can see if the actual price is higher than this red line, the standard. So for this period of time, the system will running at the battery discharge mode. And we can see that the system has selected 3 period of time to running the battery discharge mode. And for here, the time over here, they are under the lowest price standard. So for this period of time, the system will running at the battery charge mode. And for all the rest of time, the system will running at the general mode. Okay, so that is the principle of the percentage control strategy. Well, let's move to the third part. The fixed price. Well, the fixed price strategy is that the users, they can define what is the high price and what is the low price by setting an absolute price value. For example, we can see from this picture. So now the users have set if the price is higher than 1.9, and that is a high price, and if the price is lower than 0.08, and that is a low price. So follow that rule, the system will looking for the different time period, the different price that fits the requirement. For example, from here, the system find out that for this 1 hour, now the price have over the 1.9 set by the user, and the system will using this period of time to running at the battery discharge mode. And from here, so these 2 hours fits the requirement of the low price. So the system will using this period of time to running at the battery charge mode. And for all the rest of time, the system will running at the general mode. So considering the characteristics of the dynamic pricing, that these prices are actually changing every day. So that means if the user, they choose the fixed price and he needs to change the setting every day to seeking for the high maximum return on the investment. So for this strategy, we recommend that only the professional users to use this strategy. Because this strategy can give the user the best control of the whole system, but will also require him to pay more attention to this. Okay, so that is the principle of the fixed price. So let's move to the next part about how to operate this function in our app. Well, so we can first to see the steps to enter into this part, and later we can use our real station to show you how to operate that. Well, first let's take a look at this part. So if we have checked the country is now among the list in the intelligent mode, and also all the devices has met the requirement of the intelligent mode. And if we are seeking for this function in our app, there's one thing for us to check, because sometimes the country of this plant could be different. So we need to check the information of this plant as well. So after this 3 things is checked, we can find a button over here called the system strategy. And after that, we can click into it and enter into the system strategy page. We can choose the first button over here, which is the intelligent mode. And after we click in here, we can choose the country and also the area. And after that, we can choose which price data source I'm using right now. So all the dynamic pricing platform we have support have been included in this part. And next, we need to put some of the informations in this part. So this extra charge part is that due to the price we are using are all from the wholesale platforms, so we need to make sure that the final result will be close to the real energy bills. We need to put some extra charge here. For example, the handling fee and the distribution fee and the tax rate over here. And if the user, they don't know about the exact value of these 3, that is okay. We can just skip this part. And later, if he knows the exact value of this, he can still find a button to fill this information. And after that, if we click next, we enter into the power from the grid part. Well, first is about the export limit. Well, this parameter is mainly related to the different regulations from the grid operator. Well, we can set a value over here, and if we choose to turn off this function, that means so now the power export will be limited by the capability of the inverter itself. And for the import limit, well, this is also related to the contract we have made with the grid operator, and it also relates to the size of the main breaker we are using in our house. So if we click the button over here, we can see instructions of how to set the value according to the different AC breakers. And after that, if we click Save here, we will enter into the default mode. And for the default mode of the intelligent mode is that we are using the duration strategy, and the battery charge and discharging time will be 2 hours. And for the rest of the time, the system will running at the general mode. And we can still do some advanced setting about this intelligent mode, but before we introduce that part, we need to get familiar with some of the main parameters and the working modes of this intelligent mode. So we can see from this slide that all the pink squares, they represent the different working mode, and the blue squares, they represent some of the main parameters we might met during the operation. But first, let's take a look at the the working mode here. The general mode is very easy to understand, and it is the most common working mode we might use in the real application. Well, the working logic is the PV will generate power and then send to the load. And if there is some extra power, it will be charge the battery. And if there are still some extra power, they will use this power to feed into the grid. And in this mode, the battery only discharges power to supply the loads, and it will not export to the grid. And the next is the battery charge mode. Well, this mode is especially suitable for some period of time that the electricity price is low, or for sometimes that the PV generation is not very ideal. So working logic of this working mode is that the PV and the grid will supply to the load together and also charge the battery. And for the battery, it can be charged from the PV and the grid, but with the PV, it's an optional choice. And the battery won't discharge in this mode. And the next is the battery discharge mode. Well, this working mode is suitable for some high electricity price period. Well, at this mode, the PV and the battery can supply for the load together, and if there is some extra power, it will be sent to the grid. And at this battery discharge mode, the battery will discharge as much power as it can, if there is no export limit, until it has reached its battery discharge SOC. And for the feeding mode here, the working logic for the feeding mode is that the PV will generate the power to support the load. And if there is some extra power, it be first to feed into the grid, and then the extra power will be used to charge the battery. So comparing with the battery discharge mode, if you don't want to use too much power from the battery to feed into the grid, you can choose the feeding mode, because in the feeding mode, they will mainly use the power from the PV to feed into the grid. And this working mode is suitable for some high electricity price period. And from here is the PV charging mode. Well, actually, we don't use this working mode much in the real application. The working logic for this PV charging mode is the PV will generate the power and to support the load. And after that, if there is some extra power, it will be used to charge the battery. And if there is still some extra power, it will be used to feed into the grid. And under this working mode, only the PV power could be used to charge the battery, and the battery won't discharge in this mode. So this mode could be used to for some high electricity price period, but the battery's SOC is low, so we still want to charge the battery, or under some situation that the power from the grid is not very stable, or if it is an AC retrofit system. And the last working mode is the peak shifting. Well, this working mode is especially useful when some of the regions or some places, they have the regulation from the grid that have limited the power they taken from the grid, and we can set this limited power as P max. So when the power required from the loads is now lower than the P max, so at this situation, the PV and the grid, they will supply the load together and charge the battery at the same time. So under this condition, the battery won't discharge. And let's say if we have a limitation of the import power we can get from the grid for example, like 10 kilowatts. And now the load, they required 4 kilowatt power. And the PV at this stage can only generate 2 kilowatt power. So now actually the load only needs to take 2 kilowatt power from the grid. And for the rest 8 kilowatt power, the grid will use this power to charge the battery. And the second situation is that when the power requirement from the load have already higher than the Pmax, so at this stage, the PV, the grid, and the battery will supply the load together so that it won't exceed the limited power set by the grid operator. So that is all for the working modes. And next, let's take a look at the main parameters. So the first one is very familiar, it's the export limit. If we turn on this function and we set the power to the grid value as 0, that means that we don't want to export power to the grid. And if we turn on this function and we set the value of power to the grid as 5, that means that the maximum power we export to the grid is 5 kilowatts. And if we turn off this function, and that means in this case, the power to the grid will follow the inverter's capability. And the next is the import limit. Well, as we mentioned, so this part of the parameter mainly relates to the contract we have made with the grid operator, and also it will be related to our the size of the main breaker in our house. So if we turn on this function and we set the value as 10, that means that we don't want to take the power from the grid now. And if we turn on this function and we set the value as 10, and that means that the maximum power input from the grid is now 10 kilowatt. And if we turn off this function, that means that the power import from the grid will be according to the system's consumption requirements, and when it exceeds, the AC breaker will be triggered. And the next parameter is the automatic export limit. Well, this actually is a function we just updated recently. So this function is for some situations when we have met the negative electricity price. So in this case, that means that there is already too much power in the grid, and the grid hopes that all the users can take some power from the grid to use them in their house, and the users, they can get some credits by taking the power from the grid. So in this case, if we are still export power to the grid, that means that we might need to pay extra bills for this part of the power, or we can even get punished. So we have developed this function, and the system will automatically stop exporting power to the grid when it detects that now the actual export price is negative. And this function is default to open in our system. So from here, we can see the charge cutoff SOC. So this function is mainly for the working mode of battery charge mode and the PV charging mode. And we can set a maximum SOC of the battery so that if the battery is in the charging mode and it have reached this cutoff SOC, it will stop charging. So for the value over here, we recommend the user to follow the instructions of different battery brands they are using, because for some kinds of batteries, if we charge the battery too much, for example, we reach the 100% SOC every time, it might affect the lifespan of this battery. So the value set here suggests to follow the instructions by the battery's brand. And here we can see the power limit of the charge, and that means we can decide how fast or we can charge the battery. If we set a value here, we can control the power we taken from the grid to charge the battery. For example, if we want to charge the battery quickly, we can set the value higher, and if we want to charge the battery slowly, we can set the value lower. And the discharge cutoff SOC is for the working mode of battery discharge mode. And that means if I don't want to use too much power from the battery, and the rest of the power we want to save it for some other use, so we can set the value over here. When the battery is running at the battery discharge mode and the power have reached the discharge cutoff SOC, the battery will stop discharging. And the PV forbidden is a function that's suitable for some extreme negative electricity price period. So if we open this function in our system, that means the PV will stop generating the power, and we will take as much power as we can from the grid. So let's move to the next part about some of the advanced settings of our app. And I will use this as an example. So as we can see from here, So this is a real application from our app. Well, this is a test plot that can show us how to set the intelligent mode in our app. Well, first, we have already made sure that the country and the devices and also the address of this plant have met the requirement. And after that, we can find the system strategy access over here. After clicking it, we can choose the intelligent mode. So if we are setting it for the first time, we can click into this more button and enter into the setting process. So we can choose the country over here. Oh, for example, Sweden. And the area choose 6. Okay, then we can enter into the next part. From here, we can set the handling fee and the distribution fee and the tax fee over here. I just use it as an example. Okay, it seems that if I'm using my phone from the computer, I can set the number values over here. Okay, just let's skip this part for now. So here we can set the export limit and the import limit from this side. And after we clicking save, so now the system is running at its default strategy, which is a duration strategy. And we can see that, so for this part, the system is running at the battery discharge mode. And for the rest of the time, it's running at the general mode. And for this part, it's running at the battery charge mode. So if we want to change some of the informations we setting just now, we can click the basic setting over here to change some of the informations. And by clicking here, we can do some of the advanced settings. So if we enter here, we can choose a different strategy we want. By clicking here, we can choose duration, the percentage, and the fixed price. Well, first, let's take a look at the duration part. So from here, we can set the different time period we want. So now as it's running at the default mode, so the values over here are all 2 hours. We can choose different hours. For example, I'll set this value as 3, and then the system will automatically calculate the normal price hours according to our settings. And after that, I can choose different working mode for each section. For example, for the high price, I can choose the battery discharge, and I can also choose other working modes that fits my requirement. If I choose the battery discharge mode here, and here are some more settings I can set. So I can set the power to the grid, the target power of the inverter's output, and also the discharge cutoff SOC here, as we mentioned in the last part. And if we choose, for example, the feeding mode here, well, the more settings will be different. So if we're choosing the general mode here, so this can also be changed according to the different requirements. The more settings will be the power to the grid. And for the low price, the more settings could be the power to the grid, the power limit of the charge, and the charge cutoff SOC. And then we can choose to open the PV forbidden function here. And from here, we can see that the automatic export limit is default to open. And for some special functions over here, there's a little button. If we click here, it will show you the instruction of how to use this function. And here, let's see what the page looks like if we choose a percentage strategy. So now we can choose to set different values of the percentage here so that the system will give you the answer of what part is high price and what part is low price. And the sections over here is similar. We can choose different working mode for different period of time. Okay, the next is the fixed price. So for the fixed price, we can set the absolute price value here. And if the actual price is over this value is a high price, and if the actual price is lower than the price we set here is a low price. And all sections over here is similar to other strategies. We can still choose to set different working mode here. And after that, if we have chosen our settings, for example, I will use the duration as example. We can go out and see more information about how the system is running throughout the day. So the guidance, so the standard line here, if we put our indicator in this line, it will be strengthened so that we can see all the data more clearly. And let's go back to see, okay. Set. Yeah, if we have already confirmed that. So now if it shows an enable icon over here, it means that the system now is running at the intelligent mode. And we can back to the front page. So well, this is actually the function we just updated recently. It's about the AI prediction of the plant over here. And from here, we can see that if we have chosen the intelligent mode, we can see the revenue of today and yesterday and the total revenue here. And here also shows some of the informations of this plant under the intelligent mode. Yeah, for example, if we click here, we can see more informations. And here we can, actually it's a test plant, so it doesn't have many data, but in the real application, we can choose only see the parameters you want to see. And we can see the data of the plant in different time period. And also by clicking the button over here, we can change the information of the extra charge. So that is all for how to operate this function in our app. And let's continue with some of the questions we might encounter in real case. Okay. Well, first, there are some customers they might interested in the country list over here. So as we have mentioned before, now we have already included 19 countries in our intelligent mode. And for how to, yes, well, some of the customers, they want to use the intelligent mode. And so in that case, their device need to do a firmware upgrade. So that in this case, we can contact with our regional service team or contact with our headquarters device at this email. So, and there are some customers, well, they might be interested in the difference between the intelligent mode and the TOU mode. Well, the TOU mode is mainly for the peak and the value pricing. So it can set that the system, it can let the system to running at a different working mode in different time slots. But the intelligent mode will be more suitable for the dynamic pricing. And here is about the question that if some customers, they want to add their country into the intelligent mode, well, the solution is very simple. First, provide the dynamic pricing platform you're using right now, and also better to provide the access to the API this pricing platform is using right now to our Solinteg Academy. And after that, if all the information is correct, the total process will be in 2 months. And here, as we have already showed the difference between the basic settings and advanced settings, we can just skip this part. And the default operation settings for the basic mode, as we have showed in our app. So the default strategy is duration, and the default battery charge and the discharging time will be 2 hours, and the default discharge cutoff SOC is 40%. And for if some customers, they want to know which strategy is suitable for them, and we can follow the instructions that we have shown before. The duration is suitable, is a default, and it's the most simple one, and it's especially useful for those customers, they know how long the battery will need to discharge or charge. And the percentage is suitable for the customers, they want to be involved in the energy trading at any reasonable price. And the fixed strategy is suitable for some professional customers, and they want to maximize their system's earnings, and they are willing to pay more time to monitoring the daily price changes. And the next is about if in some cases, if there is some problem with the dynamic pricing platform, there will be a situation that the app in our the app that users is using, they cannot receive the real-time pricing. So in that case, our inverter will working at the general mode and operation by following the settings in the general mode. In case that the real-time pricing cannot be acquired from the supporting platforms that we are integrating right now. And for some customers, they might live in the countries that might have the negative electricity price. So for them, they will need the automatic export limit function. We now have this function right now, and in our intelligent mode, it's default to open. And some customers, they will ask us that he meets a situation that his inverter doesn't sell power to the grid in the battery discharge mode. And in this case, we will suggest them to check that if they have set the power to the grid value to 0 under the battery discharge mode in the advanced settings, once it's checked, it can solve most of the problems. And the system strategy is automatically updated every day. The system will be sent to the user's app around 23 p.m. every day, and they don't need to do other operations. The system will automatically do all the work for them. And that is all for this part of the training.